Now, when you comment on the raging political conflicts within the opposition camp, you enter an extremely contentious space. One thing seems to be clear, though. The opposition is in the midst of arguably the biggest crisis since the PDP lost power to the APC in 2015 and the Labour Party came close to winning it in 2023. For months now, years even, that crisis has torn apart the two parties. But now it seems that at least in the PDP there is a valiant attempt to bring the party back from the brink, with its leadership actively seeking modalities of conflict resolution. That may sound like a platitude that's been heard repeatedly over many months, but the PDP leadership says that this time they do really mean it. Well, we'll have to see, won't we? But what about Labour? How traumatic has the crush been on the spirit of its followers? And how much will it take to restore enough of that spirit to make Nigerians believe again? Well, to help us get a frame of reference, I'm joined now in the studio by Professor Udenta, Distinguished Fellow of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought and founding National Secretary of the Alliance for Democracy. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Charles, it's a pleasure as
How
always
nice
to be with
see you again.
Absolutely.
And I have to say you've been noticeably absent from the airwaves for a while. So I'm glad you came roaring back on this program.
You know, you do once in a while take a break.
Yes.
Assess things from different other perspectives and then watch with a maybe panoramic view and then engage at the right moment.
Well, I'm glad we're engaging. And talking about assessments, let's start with the People's Democratic Party. What do you know about what happened at these meetings today, and what is your assessment of what has emerged from them?
Historical contexts are imperative in resolving knotty issues like you've laid out. There were three legacy parties that founded this republic. The PDP, the Alliance for Democracy, I'm happy you mentioned my designation as the founding National Secretary, and then the APP as it then was, All People's Party. The other two parties, AD and APP, are gone. Consumed by internecine crisis over a period of time. PDP is the only legacy party. The three parties were constructed out of the same womb, share the same umbilicus, tied to a navel. It's the only one that is still hanging in there. So it is not just a question of one being a member of the party. I'm not. But as a lover of democracy and a patriot, it's imperative that all hands must be on deck to save that party. That sense of that legacy, that beginning. When it tore a man back to 98 to 99, that convulsive moment in which the country was adrift, cut off from the rest of the world, and these parties came together, we loyal opposition, then PDP in power. Almost an inclusive phase of our national leadership in terms of elite consensus. Today, that party is struggling for its life. That is why, as patriots, we watch closely what is going on there to see that the party regains its momentum, gathers itself together, and then fulfills that historical promise. Not like the party hasn't gotten watts, even when it was in power. But when you look at the 16 years of the PDP, and then the 10 years plus of the APC, or 10 years roughly of the APC, the difference is clear. But narrowly to the point you raised, there are three forces, implicated in this crisis in the party. One, the patriotic elements who urge not only for party unity but authenticity and autonomy of political positioning. Here is a party in itself and for itself, composed of people prepared to work hard for the party to regain its coherence and maybe win the next election as PDP, not as an attachment to another party or another power infrastructure. The other tendency are those you can consider who want the party to self-dissolve in order to make it easy for a leisurely re-entry of the Bola Tinubu presidency in 2027. These are the ones you call the Quisling. For historical reference, go find out who the Quisling are. In the Second World War, they thought that those who are misguided, either because of ego, ambition, or some desire that the PDP may not be a vehicle that will serve or suit their purposes, but some other vehicle, not the APC. So if you disintegrate or weaken the party, it makes the party almost a non-functional self, and they can now build some other force elsewhere. The first tendency from the way I've watched these meetings evolve in the past few days are marshaled by one, the acting national chairman. He saw the communique, very robust in terms of normative issues of governance and the failure of the current administration. Practical issues in terms of the committees that will drive the process of change. He is the person to say, he's come to the beat at the right time.
Well, some would dispute that.
I said, if you look at this statement, it is a public statement.
I've seen the statement.
I don't know him as a person in terms of saying I'm a part of his party, but if you see the statement, there is no better statement the party in opposition can produce as a text. Absolutely. The second will be the governor of Bauchi State and the chairman of the PDP Governors Forum, Bala Mohammed, who hosted most of the meetings, put out himself and sacrificed and took all the beatings he can take as a leader to say, in spite of the deep challenges, in spite of all the issues, the party must forge ahead. And if the neck didn't hold, the party may have found it difficult to recover its authenticity and legitimacy.
Indeed.
Even if the party neck met and shook hands and dispersed, I too was relatively shocked to see the robustness of that meeting and the practical issues they dealt with. The secretaryship position, they deferred to one month, which will still be resolved legally.
Yeah, but they didn't resolve
That's
it.
going to be a legal resolution. That's what happens in politics. The people call it in dollar.
Right.
You don't do it in one sprint. You take your time. You formulate ideas there. You contest, and then you agree. The second one is the committee on the zoning of these offices, which will be a prelude to where the presidents will likely head in 2027. It's crucial. Where the chairman goes, it's not going to be not ready to come. Now the convention planning committee itself, and most crucially, moving the convention from November or December to August, short time span. So that the party will have enough recovery period to remarshal and reassess its resources in order to move on. But what is worrisome for me, and is a note of caution, when you hear discordant tones that are disingenuous in nature, that come from where you will not even expect. Like earlier in the day, the former governor of Benue State, former governor Gabriel Soswan, was an A. And the two gentlemen, I'm giving the kudos by the people implicated in the crisis of the party, shockingly and surprisingly to me, who knows him relatively well, that the issues in the party are binarized. They are not simple binary. You want the party to survive or you want the party to die. Other strategy, other tactical issues that under the small frame can be resolved, but the practical issue is the party to survive. So if the governor of Bauchi said that chairman of the forum is working hard to guide the party in that direction of a neck, and the chairman of the party is working in that direction for that neck to hold, from the caucuses, from the stakeholders meeting to the caucus of the party to the neck, it doesn't serve the purpose of a source one, unless he has an agenda not in tandem with that resolve to create an autonomous power center within the party to speak the way he did. Why I'm raising this issue is because going further down the line, that opening may call for some other individual to say, we capitalize on all manners of these causes to rail against the party fighting for its life. This presidency, this current one, is intentional presidency. It's not the Mohammed Buhari presidency that's laid back, that can allow things to happen and maneuver. See how government has frozen, governance has frozen after 18, 19 months, as I predicted with you here. I said we will not govern this country in a robust policy-driven manner for more than 2 years. Today, we are witnessing endorsements, defections, party crisis, and they will continue.
Well, he's absorbing the opposition.
I'm saying there's a continuous seasonally. Politics is a ferment.
But
ferment of ideas and time.
How do you see that absorption by the APC, let me put it in polite terms, of the opposition in relation to this sort of thesis that you've set out on the PDP and the need for it to survive?
When you talk of opposition, are you talking of the people collectively taking a decision to be absorbed? Social contract, because our democracy is considerably weakened. Liberal democracy in Nigeria, for example, has suffered stupendous setbacks in terms of even its organic norms. You went for an election on the platform of a party. You constructed some relationship with the people, a moral relationship, and a practical material relationship. I am a member of PDP or a Labour Party. That's who I am. And I'm asking you to give me a vote, not the APC man there or woman there. Two, apart from that moral issue of identification with you at ethical level, ethical premise of relationship, I am promising to do 1 or 2 things for you. Practical things like redemption of debt. But you just owe the people, so you redeem the debt. Then you meet in a smoke-filled room, 3, 4, 5 people, and say that on behalf of the millions who you have abandoned, who you have not consulted, you didn't hold town hall like you do in the US. You go back to them and said, we have crisis in the party, in PDP or in Labour. We need to have a rethink and reshape the direction or trajectory of our political momentum to suit with the people. Hold robust town hall meetings and then tell them why the party will not serve the purpose anymore. You didn't do it. So you're absorbing one or two entities who are disconnected from the people. They do not represent the soul and heart of the people. When 2027 comes, ABC will discover it's only absorbing elemental forces completely dismembered and dislodged from the true feeling, passion, and interest of the various constituencies, their various people. That is when the party will realize that the money, whatever they are using to absorb them, pressure from EFCC, intimidation by the coercive apparatus of the state, or deals cut under the table, will not work.
But there is
that's the lesson of this PDP struggle. Is being a tenacious, I'm a close watcher, a very deep close watcher, a tenacious, almost like a jigsaw puzzle. Today you fall, tomorrow you rise. Almost at the incredible moment of despair, the integers begin to fall in place to create that powerful equation. The stakeholders meeting, the caucus meeting, head at the lodge of the Bauchi governor, and then at Legacy House, the NEC meeting, to proclaim not a dawn of a new party, not a recovery from deep-seated crisis of identity or vision, but at least a sign that there's a sense
that there's still life in the
there's
party.
some purpose, and that's what must be deepened across time.
Right.
So that the next NEC and the convention, we put to rest the disingenuous comments of the source ones of this world.
In other words, you sound confident that the party will be strengthened going forward.
It is not because it is PDP. The PDP is emblematic of that spirit of multi-party democracy in Nigeria.
Right.
So it must be strengthened, not because I love PDP. I'm not a member.
So
if it is not strengthened, because if you have the issue of coalition, let us even deal with it at the level of practicality, philosophical foundation of coalition. It must be grafted on something, not on nothing, not on the names of individuals.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, you're not officially a PDP party member.
I am not a member of the PDP.
But you've worked with many top PDP people,
and
many of your political projects have taken place
under the PDP.
Under the PDP.
Absolutely, I don't deny that.
Right.
So the point I'm making is that even if
and that's why you're very knowledgeable.
Yes, I'm deeply knowledgeable. If you have
very passionate
if you
about
have the
the things
big names
related to
in the
party.
coalition, for example, now,
Right.
somebody, the BOT member articulated it sufficiently. But the former vice president hasn't disowned the PDP. P2B hasn't disowned Labour. And that's where Rufai has left APC for SDP.
Right.
Amicia thinks still belongs to that. David Mark, who is in the North Central of that committee, is still within PDP. And the list goes on. In essence, what is the coalition? I've identified SDP, Labour, and PDP. Even in the names. That means the centrality of that locus, that point of intersection of the propensity of opposition politics and power is within the PDP.
Yeah,
because it is well grounded.
Potentially.
No, potentially. Because as the board member said, every village, not just every ward, every community, every home has a PDP emblem, symbol, and history. So it's easy to graft the rest around it.
It's got
rather than trying to build something afresh from nothing. So at the end of the day, when they finish the convention of the PDP and the party is reborn, like we talked about it here before, the phoenix rise from the ashes of despair or destruction, not like a Daedalus or a Icarus, but something that is going to emerge, Prometheus.
A sort of
reborn
phoenix.
A phoenix rising from the ashes. If it emerges, it becomes now that home that the rest of the Grand Coalition will find to make it easy. I constructed what I call the 5 keys to power. It's important.
Sure.
The first key to power is to build the civic movement. It hasn't happened, but it's going to happen. To drive the process of restoring democratic governance in the country, already tarnished by these hybrid regime elements. 2, recognize that the bigger issue of an existential crisis facing the country in economy, security, etc., in poverty, transcends and overreaches individual disputations and anti-parties. and 3 to build this grand coalition around the PDP.
Right. Well, that's the academic assessment.
That's not the academic assessment.
The practical assessment is very different when you're dealing with the egos of Nigerian politicians.
Let me tell you how it is possible.
Yeah.
APC in 2013 subsumed that ego at the moment of reckoning.
Yeah, but that was because they believed that the person who could win the election was the person that they finally picked.
The moment of reckoning is an existential moment for a party and an identity. To say that ACN of the current president, the CPC of the former president, and even the rump of APC or PDP, remember what happened then, and then the rest, AMPP and so on, can come together, overcome this ego, which is always the elephant in the room. Now we are in that presence of that moment, an existential moment of deepening national crisis, that this democracy is on the verge of being lost, and this care is taken. So whatever ego you have, it will stare you in the face in the next 6 months.
But isn't it important, given the analogy that you used of the APC didn't exist before that time. All the other parties that you mentioned, including the Alliance for Democracy, they subsumed themselves inside the new APC.
No, what was constructed was this element of forces. You have the...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They all came together.
You have the CPC.
To form the APC.
You have the CPC. You had the AMPP. You had the ACN and so forth. Now today, the biggest of the coalition force is the PDP. So the PDP could decide, do we, as a big party, after our convention, decide to step back a bit and say, okay, let us now maybe adopt something name, but we are going to be the soul of that name. Or, gentlemen and ladies, what you're searching for up is already down. In the darkness of the night, it is visible in the day.
Yeah, but what would you recommend is the best way forward? Because you are someone who sees things from a deeply philosophical point of view and from an elevated political perch. As an observer who is not directly immersed in it, which gives you a privileged position, what would you recommend as the way forward?
It's very simple. As I said, the level of contestation now of power and the intent, what I call intentionality, of a government that is part of authoritarian, competitive authoritarianism is such that alarm bells should be ringing in the homes of every major leader on the other side. It is no longer business as usual in politics. It's a fight for survival. That means we may not love the PDP. It's the best ever constructed political paradigm or infrastructure.
So you think the opposition should move into the PDP?
It is, if this party holds this convention in August and comes out clean, relatively clean, the rest of the people in the coalition of forces would recognize the only viable path to a successful dislodgement of the current infrastructure of power, presidential power, is the PDP.
What about the Labour Party? The Labour Party, under the auspices of Peter Obi, came third. Some even believe they did a lot better than that third position. Where does that fit in?
Then you have some level of uncertainty, which even Peter Obi himself recognizes. When they have an Abure who purports to be a chairman, in spite of certain, inchoate elements around his own chairmanship, this is almost completely incoherent, legally incoherent. Then you have Leonard Usman, who is essentially the acting chairman of the Obi element. You don't know how this game will play out. Obi's heart and soul started from Apaga and transitioned into the PDP. That was his home till days, if not weeks or days, to the last primary election. That means he too must be watching what goes on in PDP, even as he stays in Labour. If the PDP rebrands and is already rebuilding and rebranding itself, you can see the signs of their working under the guidance, as I said, of the acting chairman, PDP of the party, under the guidance of the chairman of the Governors Forum, Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State. PDP will say, hello, if this crisis in the Labour Party is unending, and you have a coalition that is stimulated essentially by the bigness of the names, but not the substantive elements, granted to say, this coalition has muscle all over the country, in every way, in every village, in every constituency. It doesn't have it. Now the PDP has, and it's part of my home too.
Right, but do you see the PDP having that a greater potential for recovery than the Labour Party?
The signs are there for me, given the intensity of these consultative meetings and assemblies on the past couple of days, culminating with this well-executed neck of the party and a robust very robust. I was shaken by that statement. I know you, as a scholar, intellectual, and media guy, you know that the content of that statement is very strong. That means it's a sign that the PDP is on the verge, on the course of it. The arc of history bends in its favor in terms of reclaiming that authenticity.
I think being a media hack and having seen things go theoretically and then crash when it comes to the practicals, I'm afraid I'm not as optimistic as you are.
What you do as a scholar citizen, it's not just to deal with intellectual contestations or ideas, but the ideas in practice, what we call praxis, a much more revolutionary context.
Yeah.
I'm part of that praxis in a way, even though I'm not a member of the party. So to push this thing to where it is now, to guide it to where the neck, not the theoretical neck, but the practical neck, to come up with such practical resolutions is a step in the right direction for the party.
Okay. On that note, it's been, I don't even want to use the word brilliant. It's been super brilliant talking
so
with
much.
you. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. Professor Udenta. Udenta is a distinguished fellow of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought, and you can see why. And he's also a founding National Secretary of the Alliance for Democracy.
Charles, I'm back.
Thank you very much.
I'm back.
Lovely to have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.